papers. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Hello.
We're going to start. I'm glad you could join us tonight. Welcome to the February meeting of the nonprofit plant-based nutrition organization of Wisconsin, where we like to call it PB Now. I'm Terry Lynch, and the mission of our nonprofit group is to educate, inspire, and support each other on an evidence-based plant-based nutritional path for health improvement and quality of life improvement. Our group is open to everyone, those plant-based and those just curious about it, and it's meant to be a non-judgmental place for people to come get information and support. If you'd like more information about our group, our upcoming meetings, dates, speakers, and other events and resources, you can go to our website, pbnow.org, or our Facebook page. As we do every time, can I see a show of hands or thumbs up icons for those of you who are currently plant-based? It looks right now about half, and a few more thumbs popping up. Oh, that's great. Yep, more thumbs popping up, so it's just over half. As we mentioned at the beginning of each meeting, and so I'll do this quickly, the evidence of the benefits of plant-based nutrition for people of all ages, as published in non-biased medical research, is quite striking. Whether it's improving health through increased energy, weight loss, preventing, slowing, stopping, or reversing problems like allergies, digestive problems, diabetes, heart disease, and early dementia, or increasing quality of life, helping us to feel better quickly with a stronger immune system, more endurance, less painful joints, and I missed one here, faster recovery from exercise, and clearer thinking, as well as reducing the physical, emotional, and financial side effects of the drugs and procedures that are often recommended to treat the problems plant-based nutrition can help us avoid. The research shows that our bodies do a wonderful job of healing themselves if we just stop damaging them with poor nutrition and start giving them what they need. It's truly remarkable. The benefits of plant-based nutrition are particularly relevant now during the pandemic, as 3 of the top pre-existing conditions that increase the chances of people who contract COVID have a serious reaction from it are obesity, diabetes, and high blood pressure. All 3 of these conditions have been shown in medical research and clinical practice to be improved by plant-based nutrition. Once again, it's quite amazing what your body can do to heal itself if you feed it what it needs. Now let me tell you what's in store for you tonight. You'll hear from 2 speakers tonight. First, we're going to hear from registered dietitian Joy LENZ, who has agreed to step in for Amberly, who had to step away tonight. Joy will tell us about the powerful plant-based foods, beans and other legumes, and then she'll lead a discussion of our favorite bean dishes, and hopefully you'll all share those with us. When we run out of gas, talking about beans, we'll hear from our featured speaker, Dr. Joe Liberman. Thanks, I see a few smiles there, who will give us a talk followed with questions and answers. Our program should end by 7:30. And as a reminder, we have meetings every month, usually on the second Thursday of the month at 6 p.m. Our next meeting is going to be April 8th. Our featured speaker will be Dr. Andrew Freeman, who Dr. Liberman knows. He is a cardiologist from Denver, Colorado. And in May, among other things, we're going to have a half an hour of live questions and answers with Dr. Michael Greger. Excited about that. You'll be able to find out more information about our upcoming meetings, excuse me, early next week on our website, Facebook page, or if you've registered through our website, you'll receive an email reminder of this and other upcoming events as they approach. Last, a technical note, you were all muted as you came into the meeting, and we'd ask that you stay that way during the meeting until we get, unless in the Q&A and the discussion, unless the speaker calls on you. And that way we avoid having background noise, and it allows everybody to be able to hear the speakers. And we'd also suggest If you'd like to make comments or you have questions, use the chat function. That's down at in the bottom of your Zoom screen. You should see chat if you're unfamiliar with that. Just click that and a nice white box will come up. You can just type in your comment or question and make sure that it's going to everyone and just hit enter and that'll pop up so everybody can see it. So with that, here we go. Our first speaker is a registered dietitian. In her words, for as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to help people feel their best. When she was getting ready to go to school, her mother encouraged her to check out nutrition, and lo and behold, she loved it. She earned her Bachelor of Science degree in Nutrition and Food Science at South Dakota State University and did her dietitian internship at Regents Hospital in downtown St. Paul, Minnesota. Since then, she has helped people across the age spectrum, from young children and athletes to chronically sick individuals and nursing home residents, to feel their best. Her practice is just west of Milwaukee in Lake Country. She's married. Her husband is a plant-based pediatrician and internist, Dr. Michael LENZ. She and Michael have 3 school-aged children. Tonight, she will spend a few minutes talking with us about those powerhouse foods, beans and other legumes, and then she'll lead our group discussion on bean dishes. I hope you're ready to share your favorite plates, bowls, soups, and snacks with us. I'm pleased to welcome tonight's discussion leader, registered dietitian, Joy LENZ. Joy?
Hey, all right. Thank you, everybody. I'm super excited to be here. It's so nice. So yeah, and when I got the call about this, it was really kind of ironic because this month is National Nutrition Month, and I have been celebrating beans all week in a Facebook group that I have. So I'm going to quick share my screen. Let me, let's see here, share screen. Yep, okay. Here we go. Okay. All right. I think everybody can see this, right?
Yep.
So it's National Nutrition Month, like I said. And just this week for some fun, I have a free private Facebook group called Plant Powered Joy. And in it, I just thought we'll have some fun this week with some legumes. So this week we've been encouraging legumes, and I've done some videos and posted some recipes and given lots of tips about them. And for fun, we did a bingo game. So if you want to try this, I could put a link now in the comments. When I'm done speaking, I can add a link. Or maybe this is something that we could do in the plant-based nutrition of Wisconsin group sometime. But this is just a fun little bingo game to help people keep beans more on top of mind and have some fun. So,
okay. All right.
Hey, Joy.
Yeah.
Let me interrupt you here for a minute.
Sure.
For everybody, you might, if some of these slides come up and you've got an interest in them, or the recipes when we're talking about those, we hope in the future to be able to print these things off or get them out to you. We're not at that level yet. So what I would recommend, if you've got it, is take your smartphone out and take pictures of them.
Yep.
That's a good way to keep, sorry
Yep.
for
Yeah.
Oh, that's
right. Let me, if I could interrupt one more. This is Josh Liberman. If somebody's not on mute, I think out there. So if everybody could just try to mute their Zoom while Joy is speaking, that'd be great.
Yes. Okay. Like I said, I can just do a link right to this document too in the comments. I can put it in the comments. All right. So I just came up with 10 benefits of beans, legumes, and Dr. Liberman, you can certainly add to this too, as you see. And these are in no particular order. But beans are super high in protein and fiber, and particularly resistant starch, which makes it all the way to our colon. And that really is promoting a really healthy gut bacteria. And then with that comes all these other beautiful things: decrease in insulin resistance. We have better absorption of the minerals. It has the cascade of heart health and lowering cholesterol. It can be part of a weight loss. When they look at cultural studies across the world, it's the cultures that eat a lot of legumes have the longest life expectancy. The boosts our immune system, again, going back to the gut and the healthiness there. Colon health, again, with the gut, less inflammation, and can be helpful in lowering blood pressure as well. Okay, so now these are the only 2 pictures of food I have here, but this was a quesadilla that I made not too long ago that had chickpeas in it. I spiced them up and made a homemade hummus. And then I made a quesadilla with spinach and grilled onions, and it was so good. And then just these lentil soups. Other ideas now, I have a 3-day plant-based meal plan that I give people. And I have in there a curried chickpea salad. When I'm done, I'll put a link to the comments in the comments so you guys could just download that as well. But a curried chickpea salad, there's a burrito bowl that has black beans in it. And then maybe some of you guys have made lentil meatballs. I think they're kind of fairly common in the plant-based world to make lentil meatballs. So that's another recipe. And then I do have a little cookbook too that I use with clients. Of course, I really encourage clients to use legumes in all their salads. With Asian salads, the edamame. In the Mexican dishes, or the Southwest bowls, the black beans are good. Mediterranean salads are great with like pannellinis. And then chickpeas, of course, are the common one that's used to make the faux tuna salad. So I don't know how many of you guys, you can maybe do a little thumbs up again for those of you who have made the faux tuna salad with chickpeas. How many of you guys love lentil soup? I think I make lentil soup about every other week. So I got to keep getting more and more of Amber Lee's soup recipes too. So black beans, I just got done eating black beans from my Instant Pot tonight. I love putting dried black beans in the Instant Pot, and it only takes a half hour. And then with the natural release, it's about 1 hour, but you can go from dried black beans to amazing. And even my 16-year-old daughter tonight was eating them, and she's like, wow, these are really good. So that's always a win when the teenagers love them too, right? So black beans are really good with the Instant Pot in particular. Let's see, the lentils are so often a substitution for what traditionally used to be ground beef, right? So when you think of, like the Midwestern sloppy Joe or tacos nowadays, the lentils make a great substitution as well. So otherwise, I love to make curries, oftentimes with chickpeas, and pinto beans. I use them. Like I mentioned before, I love edamame in the more Asian salads. So, all right, I think I will stop talking now, and I would love to hear how some of you guys are using legumes and lentils and beans. So maybe
I don't know if you can see the chat, but there are a number of items here. One of them was about we would eat more beans if it didn't make us so gassy. And then Becky put in something good in here, and I wonder if you would your thoughts about that, and if you might want to add to that.
Yes. Okay. All right. I'm going to stop my screen share here. All right. So yes, awesome question about having the gas. So what I would suggest, and what I suggest to my clients, is to gradually increase your amount of legumes. I love the book Fiber Fueled. He says in there, you gotta go gradual. When you think about it, like as a runner, you don't just up and run a marathon the next day. You got to train for it. And I think of college degrees. You don't just get a college degree. It's a lot of hard work. And same thing with our guts. We have to really train them by starting out small. And what unfortunately happens is people kind of go a little bit overboard. It's uncomfortable, and then they give up completely. And that is not the solution. You want to go gradual and keep it up. And eventually your gut will get trained to tolerate more and more. And that I certainly saw it in my own life. I can eat a lot more than I ever could before. So
I'll interject here too that what Rebecca talked about here too, soaking beans overnight, change the water prior to cooking, cook with fresh water, add kombu. I haven't done that, but one of my favorites I'll just throw out there. I'm not as much of a cook as a buyer. So the beans and barley has great black bean burritos and a black bean dip. And I rarely would get gassy after those. And I wondered why, when some of the other things did cause it. And so I asked them, how they prepare their beans. And basically what Becky's talking about up here about soaking overnight is and changing the water. That's what they do.
Yes. Changing the water, even rinsing the cans of beans. If you rinse them really well, that's going to help too. I think there's a couple herbs that maybe are helpful too. Ginger, and I can't think of the other ones right off the top of my head, but there's a couple herbs that are helpful. And
she mentions kombu here.
Yes, the seaweed. Mm-hmm.
I mentioned that Warren had sent in a recipe earlier today, and I thought I had the technical background to be able to put this up here, and I've been trying, and I'm not getting anywhere with it. So, Warren, if you could unmute and tell us about your favorite bean recipe.
Sure. Let me get it up on my screen. I don't have the technical expertise either, but at least that way I'll know what I'm talking about. Hang on. Here it comes. This is beet hummus.
Yum.
And hummus, as you probably know, is a Middle Eastern dish that uses a spread and as a dip. And it's usually made with tahini, or often made with tahini, which pretty sure is a sesame oil based product. But this beet hummus has no oil because oil ain't good for you. So I'll just go through all the ingredients because pretty much the recipe is mix it all together. But I'll start out with 2 cans of beans. I'll always have 1 can of garbanzo beans, and the other one will be some other kind of white beans, whether it's cannellini or navy or something like that. Some people use just garbanzo beans. That's good too. But if I like to mix garbanzo with cannellini because it smooths it a little bit more. You got to drain the beans. Also, you put these in the blender or the food processor, and you add to that 3 to 4 large garlic cloves. Now, we've been experimenting with this. In the last batch that I made, I used more garlic, and I can taste nothing but the garlic. So I wouldn't go with more than 4 garlic cloves for 2 cans of beans. Also, 4 tablespoons of fresh lemon juice, 2 tablespoons of brown mustard, 12 grinds of fresh ground black pepper. No, I'll put in a pinch of salt or a half teaspoon of liquid aminos if I'm using salt-free beans. But if you're using the conventional canned beans that have a ton of salt in them, I don't do it because that's a lot of sodium already. And last but not least, 8 ounces of pickled beets. Now I'll reserve the liquid because you can use that later to fix the consistency of your hummus to be the way you want it. but 8 ounces of pickled beets. And we use our homemade pickled beets, which also have onions. It's beets and onions, really. And then I'll reserve out about, I don't know, about a quarter of those pickled beets to add later. So I put everything in the food processor except for the beet liquid and except for maybe an ounce of pickled beets. And I'll put it on high. No, I put it on low, because when it's on low, then it, and at least in my food processor, the hummus tends to go back down into the chopping part better. I do it on low, and every now and then I'll take a spatula and shove everything down to the bottom because it likes to stick to the sides. And then I'll start adding beet liquid a little bit at a time. Now I know my wife likes to make this into kind of a ball, kind of for a presentation with crackers and that kind of thing. And in that case, maybe don't put in any liquid because you want it all to stick together. But if you want it a little bit looser, you know, put in a little bit of the liquid from the beets.
Now, does it come out red?
Yeah, if you can see my screen, it comes out that
There we
red.
go. All right.
Okay. So this is great. Dipping crackers, dipping chips. I'll dip a piece of raw kohlrabi, and it's just great. Whenever we take this to our Scrabble tournaments or wherever we go, people love it.
Now,
I'm wishing I was having some of that right now.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna see if I can figure out how to copy and paste this right into the chat.
Somebody put a recipe up with it. It is really good.
Oh, okay. Good.
And do you taste the beets at all? Is it,
Oh yeah.
Oh, you do? All right.
Oh yeah, it can taste it. It's really good, especially for folks who like pickled beets, like I do.
And this was you said a kind of a little bit, you went off an Esselstyn recipe.
Right. One of our favorite cookbooks is Anne and Jane Esselstyn's Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease Cookbook, which is not exactly the same thing as the recipes in the back of Dr. Esselstyn's book of the same title. But anyway, yeah, I started with that and I adjusted it to turn it into beet hummus. But that's a really good kind of a starter hummus recipe. I'm sure there's all kinds of things. I turned it into an artichoke hummus a few times. That was a lot milder than this beet one, but it was really good.
Now, hummus is such a great thing to use so many different ways. And for those of you who are in my camp about going and buying this stuff off the shelf, I don't know of any beet hummuses, but Outpost has it's very garlicky, but it's extremely popular. They often run out of it. Glorio's hummus, no oil. It tastes great. There's a real punch to it, nice and smooth. But like I said, a lot of garlic. So you don't want to, if you're going to be talking to people post-COVID, you might want to think twice before you eat that before you go out.
All right. Yes. I just was okay. So I just wanted a quick comment. Rebecca asked, it kind of dried versus canned. And then somebody commented and added, yep. So canned is for convenience and just really to save time. The more you are able to cook beans yourself, you will find a superior taste, I think, because you can really flavor them up too. But for convenience wise, canned is the way to go. But it's just a matter kind of preference. But yeah, the cooking them is really amazing. But I would say an Instant Pot is the way to go too, because then with an Instant Pot, you do not even have to soak them. You can soak them, but you don't have to. With an Instant Pot, you literally just put them in. And otherwise, yeah, the other thing I was thinking about too, has anybody roasted their own chickpeas? That's another thing that we can do. So you take canned chickpeas and then spice them up and throw them in the oven. So yep, Valerie, you've done that? I think I saw your hand go up, Valerie. Okay, yay, yep.
I season them with a little chili powder or, oh, what's the other spice I use? Cumin to make them pretty spicy, and they're very good. And then
Yes.
just dry roast them.
Yep.
Are you getting them crispy? I kind of got mine. I don't think I did it right. So maybe explain it a little bit more.
Well, I do spray them real lightly with a little bit of Pam or cooking spray, just a very, very small amount, and that seems to help. I know oils aren't real good, but just that tiny bit seems to help me get them nice and crisp.
And these are kind of a snack item, or you put them on salads or.
Yes and yes.
Yeah. And soup too. I've seen like some tomato soups where they're putting on the crispy garbanzo beans on the top. Mhm.
Oh, that'd be good.
And just regular garbanzo beans are kind of a nice snack too. Just, they taste kind of good. So
Yeah.
you're feeling kind of munchy, but you don't want to you want to do something healthy. That's a good one.
Yep. Let me see. What were the other comments here? Saving money. Yep, saving money as does too. My Instant Pot was filled tonight, and it was, for the price of one little bag of black beans. I think they're about $1. So you definitely get more.
Hey, Joy, how about that? Well, asafoetida, I think that Jean Reed talked about. Are you familiar with that?
Oh, that it also helps in it helps relieving gas. I have not used that. I have heard of it though. Yeah, I don't know for sure where that would be available. Would it be available?
Jean Marie, are you able to, would you be willing to unmute and just tell us where you picked that up?
Sure, it's a common spice used in India and in Ayurveda.
And where do you buy that? Do you have to go to a specialty store for that, or?
Not necessarily. You should be able to find it on a store shelf. Just most of us don't know to look for it.
Yeah.
In the spice rack. And of course, organic, just so you don't pick up anything else.
And you just put like a pinch of that on, or about how much do you put it? Do you put it when you're preparing the beans or when you're serving?
Yeah, you can kind of treat it like you do cumin. And it does have I think it has a nice taste. So, if you put a little bit too much, it's not the worst thing. It's not going to ruin your dish.
It's a new one for me. I've never heard of that before.
Yep. Okay, and then Valerie
I'll
asked.
see if I can dig up a little more info. It's been a while since I've used it myself, but this conversation reminded me of that. So.
Well, thanks a lot.
So Valerie, you asked, do I add water to the Instant Pot? And the answer is yes. So when I do the black beans in the Instant Pot, I love the feature of the saute. So first of all, I saute usually a red onion or a white onion, and then possibly a bell pepper. And I do use water to saute that, and then usually garlic. And then at that point, you can add in different spices, cumin, chili powder. And then now tonight it was just shy of the whole bag. Tonight, the recipe called for 2 cups because the end goal was soup. They wanted it to be more liquidy. It was 2 cups of dry black beans and then 3 broth that got added. Then you shut your saute off, and then
you up there a little bit, Joy.
Oh, okay. After you saute the onions, the garlic, the peppers, spices, then you put in the dry beans, and then you add usually vegetable broth, and then you would put on the Instant Pot lid and seal it up, and then it's 35 minutes that you cook it for on high. and then I let it naturally release, and then it's good to go. So I will put a link to this exact recipe tonight, this black bean soup that I ate tonight. Now, this one called for a half a teaspoon of cayenne, and I was a little hesitant because my family and me, I'm not real high. I did a quarter teaspoon of cayenne, and it was still good enough for my family. So, and to me, it had a little bit it definitely had a kick. But if you guys can tolerate way more spice than I can, this recipe calls for a half a teaspoon.
And just so you know, if for everybody, we're going to be posting this or putting this video up on YouTube probably next week. And all you need to do when you go to YouTube, you just type in PBNOW, hit search, and up will come videos of some of our past ones. So you can always shoot to that point where somebody's talking about one of the dishes that you have an interest in, and get all that information again in case you missed it this time through. And one more thing here, or two things. It looks like as a fetida, is that Penzies?
I don't,
good
not
information.
not necessarily. That would be, like she said, I think it's more of an Indian spice. But yeah, I don't know about the Penzies availability.
Oh, it looks like Becky's saying Penzies does have it.
Okay.
And then Jean Maurice put some two other pieces of info in here that are really helpful. So I take a screenshot of that.
Yep. And Carly said, yes, definitely. The more you can dry your garbanzo beans off before you roast them, that's helpful. Very good tip, Carly. Yes. Penzies has it. Okay, there you go. I see that now. Yep.
Well, Joy, thanks so much for doing this. We actually should expand this discussion a little bit more when we hit there. I'm sure there are a lot of topics, and almost everybody's got something they really like that is a favorite of theirs, and a lot of and often none of the rest of us are aware of it. So,
well, and most of the plant-based experts out there definitely recommend eating beans every day. I would say most of them definitely say to try to get a whole cup worth a day. So that can be your goal, and you can even exceed that goal as well. So they are good. And I would definitely recommend a variety and getting lots of different beans as much as you can. I also love some of the frozen beans as well. You can buy frozen black-eyed peas, frozen edamame, frozen like lima beans. Those are all available frozen too. And I like to have those for convenience as well.
and Joy, are those a little bit fresher because they were frozen at their peak, kind of?
I wouldn't be surprised. And they probably don't have the sodium content because they're not canned. They wouldn't have the sodium content either. So yeah, they taste fresher.
And as far as the canned beans, I'm sure a lot of you know that Eden's at Outpost anyway, they sell Eden's, and I think most of the other places, and they have a lot less salt than most of the canned beans, and they're really good beans.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There are no, so let's see, potatoes also nourishing and soothing. Yeah,
Yep.
Oh, that's great information. I'll take it. So Joy, thank you very much. We're
Yes.
up to so I'd like to introduce at this point our featured speaker tonight. He's a fellowship trained cardiologist practicing cardiology at Ascension Columbia St. Mary here in Milwaukee. Many of you are familiar with him. He is past president of the Wisconsin chapter of the American College of Cardiology. He's also a member of the National American College of Cardiology Prevention Subgroup. Some of the other members of that group are Dr. Dean Ornish, Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, Dr. Neil Bernard. Our speaker is an advocate for the use of plant-based nutrition to help improve heart health, general health, and quality of life. And he's seen the benefits of that in both his personal life and that of his patients. We're fortunate to have him practicing here in Milwaukee and serving as our PB Now medical director. And I'm happy to welcome him tonight, our own Dr. Joshua Liberman. Josh?
Hey, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. So thank you so much, Joy, for that wonderful kind of, intro to heart healthy eating, since we're going to talk a lot about beans and lentils as well. But obviously, that's a crucial staple for any plant-based diet. So let's get moving. I will try to share my screen now. Application window. Let's do this.
There we go.
Okay, how's that look?
That looks good.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's get talking about some how to take care of your heart mostly through lifestyle is really what the focus of PB Now is all about. Most of the time we talk about nutrition, but I'm going to talk a little bit about exercise as well. And we're going to get right into it. So over the course of the past 50 years, despite tremendous progress in pharmacological and procedural therapies and all this wonderful new medical technology we have in the hospitals and all these wonderful things we can do, despite all this, heart disease continues to be the leading cause of death in the US. And so here's just kind of a graph that shows that the most recent statistics we have compiled are from 2017. And you can see here on the left side of this chart, this is CVD, is cardiovascular disease. And basically, if you take almost all the other top 5-6 causes and add them up together, you're still not going to get what cardiovascular disease kills. If you add up all the cancers combined, you're still not going to get to what heart disease and cardiovascular disease kills. And so for a lot of people out there, that's news, especially, when I talk to a lot of women out there, they think breast cancer is the biggest risk that they face. But unfortunately, cardiovascular disease kills almost 1 million US adults every year. This is based on AHA data that on average, someone dies of CVD every 37 seconds in the US. And so that means that there are 2,300 deaths of cardiovascular disease every day. Every day. Why? Well, a lot of us have risk factors. So 116 million people have hypertension. That's 46% of US adults. And rates of death were increasing because of all the different risk factors we had and all our poor lifestyles. Rates of cardiovascular disease were increasing until about 1980s-ish. We started to see an improvement in decline. There's a lot of potential reasons, probably mostly because of decrease in smoking rates, tobacco usage rates. But unfortunately, right here is about 2010. And we're starting to go back up again. And so we made a lot of progress. We were decreasing the risk of death and the number of deaths from heart disease. But unfortunately, we're starting to climb back up again. So why are we climbing back up? We have all these wonderful techniques, right? Don't we? We have stents and angioplasty and bypass surgery and intensive care units and all this other stuff. Well, we do actually do an excellent job of saving lives for people who come in with an acute event. That means like you're having a heart attack and you come in. Death rates for that, 40, 50 years ago were extremely high, and now they are extremely low. We can do a heck of a job in the hospital of stopping heart attacks in their tracks and saving lives. The problem is that, the vast majority, almost all first MIs clearly have at least one preventable or modifiable lifestyle related risk factor, right? So there's some people that have genetics, and even that if they live a completely healthy lifestyle, they're still going to be at risk. But the rest of us, 90%, have at least one preventable or modifiable lifestyle related risk factor. For many of us, that's a lack of exercise. So only 1 in 4 US adults achieve adequate leisure time aerobic and muscle strengthening activities to meet the physical activity guidelines based on 2017 data. That is pitifully low. And, one of the contributors to the fact that we have such a high rate of death from cardiovascular disease in this country is that when it comes to the management of stable heart disease, right? So this is not coming in with a heart attack and needing your life saved immediately. This is people just out there who either know or don't know that they have heart disease. We know that the cumulative event rate, what does that mean? The people who have heart attacks, strokes, admissions for heart failure, all these kinds of things, it's about, 1 in 5, 1 in 6 people after 5 years. And this is despite, living in one of the most advanced nations with the most advanced technology, supplies and all these other things, fancy things that we can do. And we're heading in the wrong direction. By 2035, almost half of us are projected to have some form of cardiovascular disease. The total costs are going to be $1.1 trillion by 2035, and that's just around the corner. I know 2035 sounds like it's far away, but it's just over 10 years away. This is crazy how much we're going to be spending on something that is, really entirely preventable for a vast number of people in this country. So I do want to, just instead of throwing a bunch of statistics out there, I do want to, kind of take you behind the curtain of some of the data that we look at as physicians, specifically as cardiologists. And I want to talk about one study. It was called the COURAGE trial that was published over 10 years ago in 2007. And the COURAGE trial randomly assigned 2,300 people. So it was divided into 2 groups. One group got what was called optimal medical therapy, just focusing on medications to treat their heart disease, and the other was treated with angioplasty or stents or other kind of interventions. And what we saw at the end of the trial was, I'm not sure if anybody out there has any experience reading these kinds of graphs, but you see 2 lines here, and you can see that they're basically the same. Well, that's exactly what I'm trying to point out. There was no difference between those treated with an optimal kind of medical regimen plan or those treated with an intervention plan where you're putting stents in or doing angioplasty or kind of roto-rooter techniques or anything like that. Now, I do want to just highlight a point here. That doesn't mean that stents are useless, right? I do want to highlight that that if you're coming in with a heart attack, right, you shouldn't say, oh, no, I don't want one of those stents because medicines are just as good. That's what Dr. Liberman said that Thursday night. No, in the setting of an acute event, in the setting of your having an ongoing heart attack, there's nothing that's as life-saving as putting in a stent to open up that blockage and restore blood to your heart. What I'm talking about is people just out in the world not having, a heart attack, that are just living with heart disease. These people, there was no difference between medications and then putting in a stent just to fix a blockage just because it's there. So if we take a step back and we say, wait a minute, here we are, we're 2021, and with the best of contemporary medical and revascularization therapies, we are accepting a 15 to 20% event rate at 5 years as progress. And we're just managing a disease that is vastly preventable. This doesn't sound like progress to me, and it doesn't sound sustainable. And that's why we're going to be spending over $1 trillion on this problem alone in just a couple of years. And the question, I guess, becomes, why aren't procedures more effective at preventing heart attacks? Part of the reason is because if you come in with a heart attack, all right, we know which blockage is causing the problem. We know it's a ruptured plaque, and we can fix that, and we can stop that in its tracks. But for people out there that just have heart disease, they may have 5 blockages, they may have 6 blockages, they may have, dozens that are just small 5%, 3% blockages. And we actually don't know which one of those is going to be the problem, right? And so when we see just one blockage that we think we need to fix, that's really just the tip of the iceberg. And there's a whole lot of ice below the water that could easily cause that person problems. And if you look, there was a study that looked at this COURAGE trial 10 years later, right? So it was just published, a couple of years ago. And here I want to show you these lines no longer match up. And you say, oh, well, what do these lines represent? These lines represent the number of risk factors that were controlled by lifestyle among people in the trial, right? And so people who had 6 risk factors controlled had the lowest long-term morbidity and mortality. They had the lowest long-term event rate if they had the most risk factors controlled. So despite the best medical therapy, despite fancy stents and all these different tools and techniques that we have, 10 years after randomization, the patients that had the lowest mortality were the ones where all 6 risk factors were adequately controlled. Those 6 being blood pressure, bad cholesterol, smoking, physical activity, diet, and BMI or weight. right? And so there was an editorial written about this in the premier heart journal, the Journal of the American College of Cardiology. And the headline was, after learning all this about all these fancy tools and techniques and medications and all these wonderful things, it simply breaks down to don't smoke, eat healthy, and exercise. And that's what's going to keep your heart healthy. Oh, and I guess I want to highlight that the editorialist said, the importance of lifestyle change, in addition to intensive pharmacologic management and secondary prevention, which means you've already had a heart attack or an event, is often underestimated by patients and clinicians alike. And there's never been anything that's more true than that. So the editorial actually didn't recommend better meds, better stents, and certainly not better surgical techniques. It simply recommended smoking cessation, eating healthy, and exercising. Why is heart disease such a big problem? It's simply this. You know, for 2.5 million years, we've been evolving, maybe longer, who knows? And we've been devolving in the last 50 years. Our lifestyles are killing us. US walking trips, this is an old statistic, old research, but I think it emphasizes the point. Walking trips going down, auto trips going up, right? Currently performing enough physical activity, as I said, you know, it's only about 1/4 of the population, but if you break it down, 26% of men, 19% of women, only 20% of adolescents, so we have lots of future problems. And so we get this in the office quite a bit. You know, a patient says, well, you know, obesity runs in my family, that's why I'm fat, you know, I'm overweight or anything. And the doctor says, nope, the problem is that no one runs in your family, not that obesity runs in your family. In the United States, an estimated $117 billion in annual healthcare costs and about 10% of premature deaths are associated with inadequate physical activity, right? What are some of the health benefits of exercise? Lower risk of mortality, of cardiovascular mortality specifically, blood pressure, insulin sensitivity, both improved quality of sleep, reduction in anxiety, reduced risk of injuries from falls, improved cognition. As I said, inactivity is thought to contribute to 10% of premature mortality in the US. So if we could even just get, you know, one of the research broke this down, if we could just get 25% of inactive people to meet the new updated guideline, you know, physical activity recommendations, we'd actually prevent 75,000 deaths a year. 200 people a day we'd be saving their lives. One study a couple of years ago suggests that just replacing just 30 minutes of sitting with light activity corresponded to an estimated 17% lower risk of early death. And the same amount of moderate or vigorous exercise corresponded to a 35% lower mortality. Just 30 minutes a day. Just take out sitting and replace with 30 minutes of just low to moderate intensity, and you're going to be helping yourself out. So as I said, the physical activity guidelines were updated in 2018, and the current recommendations say that adults should do at least 150 to 300 minutes a week. So 150, that's just 30 minutes, 5 days a week of moderate intensity activity. A lot of people talk to me, you know, patients come to me and say, well, what should my heart rate get to? Or what should, I don't even tell patients anything about heart rate. I say, don't even worry about heart rate, right? As long as by the end of it, you're breathing a little bit heavier, maybe you have a little bit of, you know, moisture on your forehead. You know, if somebody called you on the phone and said, and asked you what you were doing, they would know that you've been exercising because you're breathing a little bit heavier, right? That's all you have to do. You do not have to worry about heart rates. Just get out there and do moderate intensity activity. And we know that individuals performing the least physical activity benefit the most. They have the hugest gains by even just small to moderate increases in physical activity. So, you know, maybe this person has the right idea, making her spouse search for the remote control 3 times a week. So, bottom line, move more, and even if you just aim for 30 minutes, 5 times a week of some cardio, you can add in 2 times a week of some resistance exercises. But if you're even if you're just doing the cardio to make it simple, go ahead and do that. All right, so that's the exercise piece, real simple. 30 minutes, 5 days a week. Don't have to spend much more time on that. So I want to talk about heart healthy eating recommendations. And you notice I'm not using the word diet. I hate the word diet because by definition, kind of diet is a fixed interval. It's a short term. It's intended almost always to be a short term intervention, right? Almost nobody does a diet for the rest of their life. So I like to talk about lifestyle changes, right? Because diets, the problem with diets is that they are all equal. Every single diet you know out there is equal for the purpose of weight loss, but that does not mean that all diets are equally healthy. We know that improvements in diet have been conclusively, it is not arguable, conclusively linked to decreases in heart attacks, strokes, different kinds of cancer, but specifically breast, prostate, and sorry, that's supposed to say colon at the bottom there, diabetes, hypertension, dementia, and autoimmune disease as well. So specifically, we're talking about the heart. Can lifestyle changes reverse heart disease? So say you've been diagnosed with heart disease. Can lifestyle changes reverse this? I know many people on this, on this Zoom meeting right now are aware of some of this data, but some of you are not. So the lifestyle heart trial, this is 20 years ago we knew this. This is from Dean Ornish, was a prospective randomized controlled trial. That means you divide the group into two different groups, one that you do the intervention and one that you do usual care to, right? And it wasn't focusing on using any medications to enact these changes, right? And so this is a busy slide, but I want to focus that that the exercise piece was not a lot of exercise in this, right? You can see here in the in the experimental group, they did 38 minutes of exercise a day. In the control group, they did 20. So it was only 18 minutes different of exercise, right? There were some other differences too, but I just wanted to highlight in terms of the exercise piece, in terms of fat intake per day, it was much lower in the experimental group because they had a much healthier diet. They did not have a high fat diet. And of course, cholesterol was dramatically lower as well, because the only things that have cholesterol in this world are things that used to walk along the ground, things that, as Dr. Esselstyn says, had faces. Labs got a lot better. I don't want to spend too much time because we don't have a ton of time. And this is a very busy slide with a lot of technical data. But the point is that in the experimental group that was focused on lifestyle, the size of blockages, the average percent diameter of blockages regressed, got smaller. And when they looked at really large blockages, they had a greater than 50% blockages. They had a very significant improvement. And down here you can see 82% of the experimental group patients had an average change towards regression or melting away blockages. Sorry, go back. The patients that were most adherent to the lifestyle changes had the biggest benefit. Those who had the least adherence had the least benefit. Kind of makes sense. And then they followed up with a study a couple years later where they looked at data after 5 years, and there was even more melting away, more regression of blockages after 5 years in the experimental group, whereas in the control group, the blockages continued to increase, and there were twice as many cardiac events in the control group as compared to the experimental or the intervention group, right? In fact, in the experimental group, the patients improved so much that it was actually necessary to reduce or discontinue blood pressure and heart medications in almost 80% of those patients. Isn't that what we should be striving for? These patients got so much healthier that they actually got off their medications, and none in the control group did that. So of course, what was that magical diet? It was the Ornish diet, which focused on fruits, vegetables, grains, legumes, and soybean products without restricting calories, right? They didn't tell people, oh, you can only eat so much of this and so much of that. They just said, as long as it's healthy, eat as much as you want, right? They had no animal products. In this trial, they actually allowed egg white and 1 cup per day of non-fat milk or yogurt. You can see this is the breakdown of the diet, but again, that's not too important. Dr. Ornish eliminated caffeine, but there's not a lot of data that was the crucial part of this. So if you're drinking coffee, as long as you're not putting cream in it, feel free to continue. In general, it was a whole foods, plant-based diet, avoiding simple sugars, and emphasizing intake of complex carbohydrates like legumes, beans, lentils, like Joy was telling us about earlier. And focus on lifestyle, moderate aerobic exercise, right? It wasn't crazy, 38 minutes a day, stress management, smoking cessation for the smokers, and group psychosocial support, because it's important to have a supportive community and network. So, you know, as Michael Pollan says, we should all be eating mostly plants, and of course, not too much. We do tend to overeat in this country. But the key is we should be eating plant-based diets. In observational studies, as well as clinical trials, populations or groups that eat primarily plant-based diets have significantly lower cholesterol levels and lower rates of death from heart disease. And, you know, I just realized I took this slide out accidentally, the next slide. But the reason I put in lower cholesterol there is because the lower your cholesterol gets, we have data that you can actually melt away blockages over time. Plant-based and vegetarian diets have been shown to, you know, prevent and reverse atherosclerosis, like Terry said in the beginning, prevent or cure diabetes, improve high blood pressure, reduce colon cancer and breast cancer, and all these different things. And here, you know, some of the research papers that support these findings. Specifically, plant proteins, intake of plant protein, but not animal protein, has been associated with favorable changes in blood pressure, waist circumference, weight, insulin sensitivity, risk of diabetes, and reductions in liver fat as well. One of the most popular, most well-known research studies that looked at plant-based eating and showed the benefits of plant-based eating was called the Adventist Health Study. So it's focusing on Seventh-day Adventists, almost 100,000 people living in, mostly in Southern California around Loma Linda. Why Seventh-day Adventists? Because as you know, kind of part of the religion, it's a kind of a cultural or a common thing to eat more vegetarian in these groups. There was, of course, a special effort to recruit Black subjects in this trial, because Black people tend to be extremely underrepresented in clinical trials, and as well women typically are underrepresented. But this trial looked at there was 65% women, and the median age at enrollment was 57 years old. So, you know, a population that looks like a lot of us. And the breakdown was that about half of the people were vegetarian and half were non-vegetarian. And, you know, when you trying to compare vegan with different, you know, kind of other forms of vegetarian, you can see the breakdown there. And what do we see? We saw that vegetarian or plant-based dietary patterns were associated with lower weight, lower incidence of diabetes, metabolic syndrome, high blood pressure, cancer, and lower rates of death, even after adjustment for other risk factors. So what is it about plants? Well, really, if you break it down, and we're not going to go into all these things, eating a plant-based diet, it's about what plants have and what they don't have, right? So plants have plant protein, they have monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats, and they have fiber. What don't plants have? They don't have cholesterol. They don't have saturated fat for the most part. You know, coconut oil is technically a saturated fat. And so you know, that's maybe a topic for a different time. Plants don't have heme iron like red meat does. Plants don't have TMAO or advanced glycation end products or heterocyclic amines or carnitine or taurine or all these other kinds of things that have been shown to be unhealthy and promote inflammation, cancer, and heart and atherosclerosis, plaque buildup. So let's just talk a little bit more about plant protein. A higher intake of plant protein is associated with a lower risk of type 2 diabetes. So this chart is basically saying that if you replace this type of food over here with plant proteins, what happens to your risk of death? And sure, so if you replace processed meat, which is probably the worst thing you could be eating, you have a much lower risk. Oh, sorry, not death, of diabetes. This study was diabetes. You have a much lower risk of diabetes. If you replace potatoes with plant protein, much lower risk of diabetes, and onward and upward. This is getting to what Joy was talking about us earlier. Higher intake of nuts and grains or legumes specifically was associated with lower cardiovascular disease related and all-cause mortality. So this means that as your intake of these items went up, your risk of death went down. As intake went up, death went down. I actually want to put in my pointer, I guess. Here we go. Okay. Oh, and I'm blocking my. Forget. So this is what when a peanut goes to see a psychiatrist and says that he's a nut, he's not really. He's a legume. Hopefully you found that funny. All right, more about plant protein. So in observational studies that collectively have followed over 200,000 lives, substituting just 3% of energy from animal protein, taking away 3% of your total intake, of your total energy intake that comes from animal protein with plant protein, was associated with lower total mortality, lower heart-related mortality by almost 40% in some studies, and lower cancer mortality, up to 50% lower cancer mortality, right? So what does 3% of your energy intake look like? Well, if you on average take in about 2,000 calories a day, and that's supposed to be an average amount, 3% of that is really a very small amount. We're talking about a small amount of beans a day, a small amount of tofu, or a small amount of soybeans or edamame, right? We're not talking about adding in a huge amount of these things, and you would get a significant benefit. And of course, if you go all plant-based, then you're going to get even more benefit. So what is it about plants? Well, they also have monounsaturated fats and polyunsaturated fats. And I've heard from a couple of the people on this call, like, oh, oils are bad, fats are bad. I'll tell you, I'm not a supporter of that approach. I know that there certainly are a lot in the plant-based world that think that all fats are bad and all oils are bad. I certainly have yet to see any data that compares a completely oil-free plant-based diet with a plant-based diet that involves oil. The studies that are out there maybe show, an oil-free plant-based diet versus the Mediterranean diet that has meat in it, or other diets that have meat in it. I'm not trying to convince you one way or another. I'm not trying to convince you that you should be eating oil or you shouldn't be eating oil or fats or anything like that. I just want to tell you that there are certainly some studies that show that as certainly as compared to animal fats, monounsaturated fats and polyunsaturated fats are certainly much healthier than animal sources of fat and oil. So there can be good fats and bad fats. Certainly monounsaturated fats, have long thought to be, in the good fat category. That's omega-9 fatty acids, major source of major source of fat in the Mediterranean diet was omega-9 fats, with olive oil being the prime component. Examples of foods that are high in monounsaturated fats, olives and olive oil, of course, peanuts and peanut oil, cannolis and canola oil. Come on, wait a minute. Really? Cannolis? No way. Cannolis don't have monounsaturated fats. Cannolis aren't healthy, and canola oil doesn't come from cannolis. That's rapeseed. Replacing 5% of your energy from saturated fat. So for those who aren't plant-based on this meeting, on this call, if you subtract your saturated fat from animals with monounsaturated fats, you can have a 13% lower risk of total mortality. Polyunsaturated fat, even more powerful. With every 5% increase in energy from polyunsaturated fats, like omega-3 fats, there's a 10% decrease in risk of heart disease. And if you replaced all the saturated fat in your diet with polyunsaturated fatty acid, you can reduce the risk of heart disease by 40%. So here's just a little chart again that shows that what you take out of your diet and how much what your risk will be. So if you replace saturated fat with trans fat, your risk actually goes up. Well, that makes sense. We know that trans fats are bad. If you replace saturated fat with monounsaturated, you get a 15% reduction. Polyunsaturated, 25% reduction. If you add in carbohydrates from refined starches and sugars, like we were doing through most of the late 70s and 80s, you're going to get an increase in mortality. That's why the whole idea about low-fat diets did not work out. But if you replace it with carbohydrates from whole grains, then you're actually going to get a decrease in risk level. Here's just another way of saying it. Another beautiful picture showing the difference between all the different kinds of fats. All right, and then fiber. So plants obviously have a lot of fiber. This is what I call the original paleo diet, right? Because our ancestors consumed a wide variety of ever-changing plant foods that gave them up to 100 grams of fiber a day. Unfortunately, in this country, we're mostly at 15 grams of fiber a day, nowhere near what we should be doing. Dietary fiber lowers your cholesterol level, slows glucose absorption, improves insulin sensitivity, lowers blood pressure, does lots of wonderful things. Dietary fiber reduces the risk of death from heart-related infectious and respiratory diseases. Can't be said any more simply than that, right? Total death goes down by 22% when you increase your dietary fiber intake. If you're eating a plant-based diet, you're clearly increasing your fiber intake. You have a 40% lower risk of dying from cancer when you increase your fiber intake. Right? How much fiber is in pork, in bacon, in beef, in chicken, or in fish? None, right? There's no fiber in any of these things. That is one of the huge reasons why plant-based diets are healthier than other diets. So what is it about plants? It's a mixture of plant proteins, polyunsaturated, monounsaturated fats, fiber, but it's also what plants don't have. And again, I'm not going to go into what they don't have. That would make this talk way too long for a Thursday night. But I also want to say it's more than just like one specific macronutrient or one specific thing. It's not just about TMAO. It's not just about, plant proteins or anything like that. It's all of them put together combined, right? Because Dr. Ornish has moved on from his studies looking at just the heart, and he's shown just a number of years ago, this is actually over 10 years ago, that changing to a plant-based diet caused beneficial changes in your DNA expression, in your gene expression. 500 genes in just 3 months, he was able to show that there was upregulation in disease-preventing genes, downregulation of genes that promote breast cancer and prostate cancer, and downregulating genes that promote inflammation and oxidative stress. Okay, and then very recently, just a couple months ago, there was another study that looked at genetics, and a pro-inflammatory diet, which was the typical standard American diet, increased the risk of developing heart disease by 38% when adjusting for risk factors and confounders. Again, based on genetic changes, expression of different genes, upregulation and downregulation. So at this point in medical history and scientific history, there is a growing convergence of evidence that an optimal diet is plant-based, consisting predominantly of fruits and vegetables and grains and legumes and soy products, low in refined carbohydrates and high in complex carbohydrates. Unfortunately, too many of us in this country are saying this: give it to me straight, doc. How long do I have before I can, before I have to take your advice? How long do I have to ignore it? But over time, it's changing, right? Historically, we had tons of ads promoting meat, right? Different forms of ads. This was a very effective ad. I remember it growing up. Beef, it's what's for dinner. Made you think you were manly, lots of cowboys in and whatnot, right? And then, of course, more recently, some other, personalities have supported, intake of meat. But we're moving away from that. Over time, it's clearly changing. We're seeing more and more advertisements. We're seeing more and more options. And we're seeing that pop culture, celebrities, athletes, everybody are talking about plant-based diets. This is where it starts to happen. And we're seeing it in the news as well. The Ornish diet has been rated #1 for heart health by U.S. News and World Report for 8 years in a row, 2011 to 2019. I actually don't remember. I think it was 2022, so I have to update that slide. The Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics in 2016 put out their most recent position paper, right? So this is the official organization of dietitians. For a long time, they were not very supportive of plant-based diets, but now they're saying that appropriately planned vegetarian, including vegan diets, are healthy, nutritionally adequate, and provide health benefits in the prevention treatment of certain diseases, right? So everything is moving in this direction. They also comment about how they're more environmentally sustainable. That's a topic for a different time as well. Remember, how to keep your heart healthy: don't smoke, eat a healthy, whole foods, plant-based diet, and exercise regularly. Doctor of the future will no longer treat the human frame with drugs, but rather will cure and prevent disease with nutrition. Who do you think said that? That was Thomas Edison. This stuff is not new. It's just new, unfortunately, to some of us, right? And Ben Franklin said, to lengthen thy life, lessen thy meals. So this stuff, this is not new information. but it dates back even earlier than a bunch of white guys in our history said it, right? Probably 3,000 years ago, more than that, 4,000 years ago, in what was generally considered to be the first medical text, what was called the Ni Ching, the author, Huang Ti, said, superior doctors prevent disease, mediocre doctors treat the disease before evident, and inferior doctors treat the full-blown disease. We should be focusing on preventing heart disease, right? Not reacting to it with stents and medications. So that was quick, and I threw a lot of information at you. So our goals for tonight may have been different, but I certainly hope that both you and I got what we wanted out of tonight's meeting. Thank you all.
Excellent job. Thank you so much, Josh. That is just full of excellent information and a number of things that I was unaware of before, and I pay a lot of attention to this. And I love the humor.
Thanks.
See, one thing I wanted to, but before we get into question and answers, I've got a question here. One of the things that you mentioned was about the low-fat diet, that was kind of disproven, but that you don't mean going low-fat like Ornish, where you're doing it by plant-based. You meant when they replaced the fat with highly processed foods.
Yeah, exactly. So in the 70s, and it turns out there's been a lot of journalism into this, but in the late 70s, basically, a lot of the sugar companies basically, paid off scientists to try to cast all the blame on fat, and instead of looking at the different effects of saturated fat versus unsaturated fat and all this stuff. Basically, the message got out that all fat was bad. We should reduce fat. And of course, what happened was we increased carbohydrate intake as a result of that. And again, this is not specific to plant-based diets or Ornish or anything. This is just general standard American diets. The message got out through the American Heart Association, all these different organizations, that we should be reducing the fat. Products were engineered that had low fat, but of course they had higher levels of sugar, higher levels of carbohydrate. And sure enough, we got fatter as a country. And so people then, got very upset with, medical authorities. They lost a lot of faith and trust in medical authorities and said, how can this be? You told us to do this thing. We've all gotten fat. We've all gotten, less healthy. And it turns out that our messaging was just terrible on it. We should not be focusing on simply lowering the fat content in our diet and thinking that that's healthy. Now, again, that's not a comment talking about plant-based diets. Plant-based diets are naturally going to be extremely low fat. Certainly, if you're a no oil kind of person, you're going to have a zero fat diet. But again, we can debate that another time. For those of you who are no oil or believe in that, or for those of you who don't believe in that, just understand that you're both right. Neither of you is going to be wrong, right? And again, we in the plant-based world or people trying to get into the plant-based world, I sometimes lose the forest for the trees, right? Plant-based experts, plant-based authorities, people in this field, preventive, leaders, agree on 95% of what they're saying. 95% is, move to a plant-based diet, eat healthy, exercise, don't smoke, right? The 5% that they can disagree on is, should there be oil in it? Should there not? Should there be nuts? Should there, that kind of stuff. We can quibble. We can try to search for that data. We can look at animal-based data or whatnot, but don't focus on the 5%. Focus on the 95%. If you can get to the 95%, do not be upset with yourself or do not feel like you're too confused or the messaging is wrong and then just throw your hands up and say, I'm going to go back to eating bacon then, right? I'd rather have you do the 95% and you can choose who you trust more about that 5%, whether it's no oil or anything. That's small potatoes compared to the 95%.
I see Barb Kurzweil. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, Barb, but I see your hand was put up a while ago. If you're there and you can hear us, if you want to unmute and ask your question. Well, we can come back to that a little bit later, or if you'd like to type it into the chat box, that's great. One of the questions here was, Can you explain calcium CT score?
Yeah, let's do that as a different topic. We did that a couple of years ago. I'd love to give that talk again. We can do that, but that doesn't really fit into tonight. And that's a fairly longer conversation. So I'm happy to come back again and do that a different time.
There's another question about, I read something about the size of cholesterol. I know you've talked about this before. Is more important than the cholesterol numbers. Any comments?
Yeah, so again, that gets to be a pretty complex topic. I don't want this to be just an overall cardiology grab bag. Again, we can do that another time. I'm happy to do that. In a nutshell, though, there are different ways to measure cholesterol. The traditional kind of routine way that most doctors have been doing it for the last 40 years, the fasting lipid panel, turns out is probably not as accurate as you want it to be or as we want it to be. And it does make more sense to count up cholesterol molecules, or really what are LDL molecules or particles, rather than just the amount of cholesterol that they contain. But again, a little bit too much, I think, for tonight's talk. But happy to come back and talk about it another time.
I've got a question. It's anecdotal, but it's always enjoyable to hear about personal stories of patients. And you've talked about this every month. You've brought something in. Are there any patients that you can think of off the top of your head going back over the years that that kind of stood out, that where you saw a change, maybe that you were even surprised to see?
So to be honest, I wouldn't say I'm surprised. I guess I'm surprised. What I would say I'm surprised about is when many doctors don't even offer something to the patient, right? They don't offer this information, this education to the patient, because they just decide ahead of time, it's too hard, they're not going to do it, right? And so I have had patients that have walked into my office, and everybody's guilty of forming an opinion based on what somebody looks like or how somebody's acting or something, and we should try to obviously not do that. But my first impression as I walk in might be, this person's going to have a hard time making the change, right? I just, and even I'm guilty of it. You kind of make a snap decision. You see somebody and you think, I don't know if he's going to do it. But regardless, you treat them all the same. You talk to them. You talk about the benefits of plant-based eating, and sure enough, they come back 3 months and they've done it, and they've had considerable success, and they've proven me wrong. Not that I ever would have said you're not going to be able to do this. But in the back of my mind, I say, see, Liberman, that's why you shouldn't have made any assumptions about that person, because this is stuff that everybody can do. They just have to put their mind to it. So that's what I would say is the surprising, is that even me, sometimes I get caught up saying, boy, I think it might be hard for this person. And sure enough, they prove me wrong, which is wonderful.
Here's a comment or question. It says, what do you say when people say their body actually craves animal products, so they stop being vegan because of this? And or two, what do you say when people say everything in moderation and they don't go?
Listen, what I would say is don't try to convince somebody else, right? You can provide education, you can lead by example, but if you try to, proselytize, if you try to preach, if you try to push things on, they're just gonna rebel, right? So you just hope you lead by example. And what do I mean by that? Well, you share with them that you've decreased your medications. You're off insulin. You no longer have to take blood pressure medicine. You no longer have to take ibuprofen after playing tennis because your knees feel great. These are the things you lead by example, right? You're not going to be able to tell somebody that it's silly to say that their body craves animal products. If somebody says that to me, I say, I don't know what that, it's not like we have a biological underpinning that drives us to eat to eat animals. It's kind of silly on the face. So if somebody says that to me, that they can't do it because they crave it too much, I say, okay, well, we'll work on this over time. Maybe try to keep it to once a week then, right? And over time, listen, I even just said it I say it probably a couple times a week. Patients say, well, don't you miss it? Or aren't I going to miss it? I say, listen, out of doing this for as long as I've been doing this, I don't have a single patient in my office that gave up red meat that a year later was like, boy, I really miss it though. I wish I always want to go back to it, but I'm not going to. Everybody that ever, makes this change says, doc, it's funny. I don't even miss it anymore, right? Now, does that mean that they're going to be exclusively plant-based in the future? No, but the point is that people don't miss it in general. People don't miss it. And then in terms of the moderation thing, I mean, again, there's no data that says that that's just an adage. It's just a cliche that we say everything in moderation is fine, right? But we know that that's not true, right? So there's data, for example, that say that drinking 1 soda a day increases your risk for diabetes by about 15%. Now, many people out there in this country would say 1 soda a day, that's moderation, right? I remember, being in training, one of my co-fellows drank a 12-pack of Diet Coke a day. Every day he drank a 12-pack of Diet Coke, right? And so you'd say, well, gee, 1 soda a day, that's moderation, isn't it? The answer is no, it's not. We know, we have proof that that isn't good, you know? Can you do cocaine in moderation? Can you do heroin? I mean, just doing things, just saying, oh, well, as long as it's in moderation, there's no basis in science.
Could you talk about the benefits of fish oil for overall health?
Yeah, so again, this gets to where there's some people that don't want to do any oil or any fat at all, right? And there's some that say, well, if you focus on healthy oils, there is benefit. And we do have evidence that that again, compared to regular diets, we don't have any evidence of a no oil plant-based diet compared to an oil plant-based diet, right? That study has not been done. So it's hard to interpret this evidence. But if you take patients with risk factors, patients with heart disease, and you put them on high dose purified omega-3 fatty acids, fish oil, you can reduce their risk of heart attack by 25%. Certainly one study looked at that. It was a special preparation of EPA, which is pentanoic acid. There are older studies that also show that purified EPA can lead to lower rates of heart disease and stroke. I think the data supports the use of purified, high quality EPA. We know that populations in the world that have naturally high levels of omega-3 in their bloodstream, if you look at like the coastal populations of Japan or like Alaskan Inuit, what we used to refer to as Eskimos, they don't have heart attacks in their societies, and they have very high levels of omega-3 in their bloodstream. So again, I personally am not a no oil guy. That doesn't mean that if you believe in no oil that you're wrong, right? We can all be right. We just don't know. But I personally don't believe in that, and I think that there's benefit to no oil. And the lights just went off in my office, so I apologize.
I've noticed that. It must be. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Here's one on caffeine. It says diuretic effect of caffeine pulls water out of the cells.
It's minimal. It's really minimal.
Okay, so it says
there is some. It's a very minimal effect, and I mean, unless you're drinking, 4 cups of coffee a day, 5 cups of coffee a day, you probably don't have to worry about it. A cup of coffee a day is not going to make you dry out too much.
In this case, it was talking about congestive heart failure.
Oh, I would not use coffee as a treatment for you. If you have congestive heart failure, there's other better. I mean, first of all, plant-based lifestyle is going to be the most important. Avoiding sodium is probably the second most important thing you can do. But coffee is not going to be nearly as an effective as a diuretic as you might need if you have congestive heart failure. Number one. Number two is caffeine is going to be horrible for your weak heart anyway. So I would not recommend using caffeine as a natural diuretic in that state.
Can you talk about the difference between plant protein and animal protein? Is it simply a matter of size, complexity of the molecule, or is there more to it?
Yeah, it's actually the amino acid breakdown too. I mean, there are amino acids that are more commonly found in animal proteins that aren't found in plant proteins that are shown to increase high blood pressure, increase inflammation, increase lots of different things. And on the other hand, the amino acids that are commonly found in plant-based proteins are associated with better health. So it's not necessarily the size, but ultimately it probably comes down to the amino acid breakdown.
And then there's a comment here too that you can easily find plant-based omega-3 without using fish oil.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't know about easily, but yeah. I mean, so where do fish get it from, right? They get it from algae. I mean, that's ultimately where fish get it. I mean, big fish get it from small fish, but small fish ultimately get it from algae. So you can get plant-based sources of omega-3. It ends up being expensive is the problem.
And talking about heart disease, when you see patients who do plant-based nutrition, do you notice that is there a marker or other markers that like cholesterol or blood pressure that seem to first?
Oh, yeah.
By that?
So many things get better, but probably the three things that I most look at when I'm dealing with somebody and trying to assess their risk status is going to be their cholesterol profile. So cholesterol profile includes triglycerides, good cholesterol, bad cholesterol, that kind of stuff. I'm looking at their insulin resistance, so their hemoglobin A1C, so that's a measurement of sugar and risk for diabetes. And then I'm also typically looking at what's called the CRP, or the C-reactive protein, which is a marker of inflammation. Those three things are separate, but they're all related in terms of health. And all three of those things get better with plant-based diets. But the one that I'm always most amazed by is the marker of inflammation, the CRP. That thing, if you move to a completely plant-based diet, the CRP plummets and becomes truly ideal, and your level of inflammation decreases substantially.
That's amazing. And how quickly can you see some of these things happen? And I guess I'd also ask, how quickly have you seen, for people who go all the way, begin to feel better? And have you also seen that mentally or emotionally? I mean, were people's attitudes?
Oh yeah, I mean, within weeks, you can see people report that they're feeling better. If you did blood tests, you would see improvements within weeks. I don't bring back people just in weeks. I usually bring them back on the order of 3 months, where we see, we can see some very significant changes. But people report feeling better after just days. I mean, the physicians committee, the PCRM, Dr. Barnard's group, they have a 21-day vegan Kickstart program, and by the end of that, most people are saying they feel great. So that's just 3 weeks.
And there's another comment here: plant omegas are ALA. They need to convert to EPA and DHA.
Yeah. So alpha-linoleic acid is the plant-based source of omega-3. The problem is that the human body needs to convert that to EPA and DHA. Which are the biologically active forms, and it's a very inefficient conversion process. So you can get ALA in like flax and walnuts and then things like that. The problem is that you have to eat a whole lot of that stuff to get to be able to actually increase the levels of omega-3 in your bloodstream.
Right. And anybody else with questions? Dr. Liberman, thank you so much. This was outstanding. And it's time for you to go home, as Joy mentioned here. So thanks a lot, and thank you to everybody for coming. Next month will be on the 8th. It will be cardiologist who Josh knows pretty well from Colorado, and who initially suggested as a speaker. He actually headed up, I don't know if he still heads up, that prevention subgroup at the American College.
He actually had to, it was time for him to rotate off leadership, so he's no longer the leader, but he's still on the committee.
Right, but a great guy. So that'll be next month, and then the month after that, Dr. Greger. So thanks everybody for coming, and hope you have a great night. And thank you, Josh, and thank you, Joy.
Yes.
Thank you all.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Joy.
Yep. Bye.
Bye-bye.